Hello, and welcome to the Small Town Tourist Podcast, where we experience and explore everything that makes small towns great. I'm your host, Abbey Graves, and today we don't have any special guests. We are just talking, you and me, person to person. I realized I kind of dove headfirst into making this podcast. I didn't have any introduction of what to expect. I just said, hey, here's 3 episodes. Enjoy. So I just want to give you a little backstory today on myself as your host of this podcast, as well as being the small town tourist and how that kind of got started. So let's start at the very beginning.
Then we all agree that this little town has got its ups and it's got its downs, but growing up somewhere else around wouldn't beat this place. Yeah, that's my hometown.
Some backstory on me. I'm from Long Prairie, Minnesota, small town in central Minnesota, county seat for Todd County. I was born and raised there, and I could not wait to get out. Not that I didn't love the town. I did love the aspect of really knowing pretty much everyone that lived in town. It's a small enough community where you kind of have a good idea of who everyone is. It's definitely small enough for your mom to know everything you're doing before you do it. But I truly did love the town, but I was ready for bigger and better things. So after high school, I ended up going to college down in Mendota Heights, just outside of Eagan there, and I went to school for radio broadcasting, got my degree in that. Worked down in the cities, working multiple jobs. My resume is very deep. I was a radio DJ in Minneapolis. I also worked at a print shop. I worked at Lifetime Fitness. I worked at Mall of America for a while. I did a lot in a very little time. I was down in the cities for just over a year and a half, but I realized the cities were not for me. I'm from a small town. I'm used to being surrounded by cows and fields and only having one stoplight in the town. And the cities I found to be just a little too overwhelming. So my time there did not last long. I realized I needed to be closer to home. I needed to be closer to that small town that I grew up in because, I was spending all my free time home in Long Prairie because that's where all my friends were. So when the opportunity came up to move to the St. Cloud area, I jumped right on that. Town Square Media was hiring a full-time radio DJ, so jumped at that opportunity and spent 7 wonderful years working for that company. I had the time of my life, met so many incredible people throughout that process, and truly loved what I did. So that's kind of where I spent the bulk of my early adulthood. And during that time, I ended up starting the Small Town Tourist blog because I was spending time in the St. Cloud area. That's where I was living. That's where I was working. That's where I was having all of my fun. And I realized that the St. Cloud area isn't just St. Cloud and Waite Park. It's a bunch of different smaller towns that kind of get looked over. People don't think that there's fun and cool things to experience and explore there, so I wanted to spotlight them. So in 2019, I had the idea to start the blog, The Small Town Tourist, where I would highlight whatever fun thing I was doing in those small towns and just share my story of what I discovered, what I found, what cool things to check out, and just life experiences. I kind of treated it more like a diary of things that I was doing, and I was loving it. I absolutely loved writing on that blog, but life changes and you get busy, and I ended up kind of letting that blog take a backseat in my life. I think in 2022, I only posted like 1 entry on the website in total, so I didn't have the time for it. I didn't have the energy, and it just wasn't a priority, but that's all kind of changing now. I'm having a pretty big life switch here. I am switching careers, going from being a radio DJ to working for Stearns County. So making a big jump with that. And I'm really looking forward to having a little bit more free time and a little more flexibility to actually do what I want to do with the Small Town Tourist. So the blog is still going to be existing as it has for pictures and stories and my outlet for writing because I do really love writing. And now I'm going to be starting the podcast, which is something I've always wanted to do. I've been dreaming of having my own podcast for years, and now I'm finally taking the plunge and doing it. And I am so excited for all the ideas that I have with it, hoping those ideas turn into concrete or digital things. As you've heard, or hopefully you've heard, or if this is your first episode, welcome. I do already have 3 podcast episodes out. I'm a little late to the party on the intro. I got too excited, uploaded too early. It happens. But I already have 3 incredible interviews out with some truly wonderful people that I have met over my time here in the St. Cloud area. Aaron Clafton being one of them, country singer from Sauk Rapids. He now lives in Nashville. Aaron Simmons, another incredible country singer that I have We actually met via TikTok this past year. He is originally from southern Minnesota, lives in Nashville, and then Liz Fiddler, who is a nurse practitioner turned full-time flower farmer from St. Joe. So I do have a lot of really cool interviews already out, a lot more to come. So I'm really looking forward to people getting to share the stories of the towns that they come from, because I think everyone does have a really incredible and unique story. No two stories are ever going to be the same. You can grow up down the street from someone and you're going to have a completely different experience than they do. So I'm really looking forward to highlighting those stories, sharing those experiences, and just shining a spotlight on some of the smaller towns and the smaller communities that we grow up in and just don't get the recognition that they deserve. So I'm really hoping to shine a light on them, share those stories, and maybe inspire you to spend a little more time hanging out in small towns, because they're pretty great. So thank you so much for being along for the ride on this. I really appreciate you checking out the Small Town Tourist. It would be a huge help if you could subscribe to this podcast on whatever podcast platform you are using. I would also love a rating and review, because it really helps boost the podcast in the algorithm. It gets more people listening to it. It gets more stories shared. So please, please, please be an active listener. I really would appreciate that. And I just appreciate you taking the time to tap on this and put me in your ears for a couple minutes. So thank you so much for being here for the Small Town Tourist podcast. I'm really looking forward to spending more time with you. And if you have any suggestions of who you might want to have to tell their story on the podcast, if you know of a really unique business owner or someone that's just a vibrant personality from a smaller town or even a bigger town, I'm going to be reaching out to anyone and everyone. If you have a suggestion, please send it my way. The best way to do that is to send me a message on the Small Town Tourist Instagram page, which is at the Small Town Tourist. Again, thank you so much for listening. I am so looking forward to this. I've been wanting to do this for years, and I'm so happy that it's finally happening. So thank you so much again. Welcome to the Small Town Tourist podcast. Thanks for listening to the Small Town Tourist podcast. I'm your host, Abbey Minky Graves. Our theme song is That's My Hometown by Aaron Simmons. You can find him online, aaronsimmonsmusic.com, and wherever you stream music. Be sure to check out the blog, thesmalltowntourist.com, and follow on Instagram at thesmalltowntourist.